Hi, this is Johnny Burgin along with Stephanie Tice, aka the Blues Raccoon. Welcome to our new video podcast, No Border Blues, which takes a look at notable international blues artists and hidden blues scenes from around the world.
Thank you, Johnny, for that introduction. Johnny is known as the worldwide West Side Guitar Man, and he has performed around the world with many musicians, including Europe, Japan, and South America.
Stephanie recently produced No Border Blues Japan on Delmark Records, which is the first American compilation of the Japanese underground blues scene. And she got interested in international blues artists as a DJ at KKCR in Kauai, and had a kind of a spotlight on those artists on her show with Basking in the Blues.
Yes. Today, our show is sponsored by the Chicago Blues Network, which is an educational platform that honors the living history of the Chicago blues. Today, we have with us the world famous international artist, Aki Kumar. So welcome, Aki.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I have to say, you've come such a long way since we met about 6 years ago, and I was amazed then, and I'm amazed now. You've really transformed yourself. But let's just to set the stage. Let's start with how you got into blues and how you sort of got into the San Francisco blues scene.
Yeah, I mean that's a long story and a long answer, but I'll try and summarize it as best as I can. I started listening to blues only as a result of listening to rock and roll and early rock and roll, specifically 50s music. And why that is, I've never been able to explain to anybody. I don't know why I was drawn to that. I think it just is the greatest music on the planet. And when I landed in the
Keep
US,
coming back to it too, like Coochie Coochie Coo, and then some things on Dilruba. So
what's that?
And there was a song in Dilruba. Was it Mama Pick Me or something?
Pick Me Mama. That's a tribute to that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. That's right in that wheelhouse.
Yes, and in fact, Pick Me Mama I wrote it directly as a tribute to Little Richard and Chuck Berry. I kind of stole bass lines and melodies from their songs and kind of pieced this together just as a tribute. So that's really what got me going in the blues direction from listening to a lot of oldies radio when in the late 90s when I was in the US. And in my early 20s, I was kind of settling into a job as a software engineer, which is really what I wanted to do. I was happy to do it. It gave me my stable base in the United States and kept me in the US. But I really needed to find a more cultural connection with the country. And I've always been an old soul, never really been connected to pop or contemporary music in a very deep way. So it was just the most fortunate coincidences that there was a lively blues scene in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there were shows and artists still playing and harmonica players performing like a couple of miles from where I stayed. So I could go and watch these guys play, and it was connected to all of this rock and roll and oldies that I was listening to and I loved. And I should mention, even though you are going to hate me for this, is the Beatles. Beatles got me into stuff like song composition, harmonies, stagecraft, all of that stuff. From watching that is where I derived a lot of it from.
Great, but you're a little modest because you went from selling merch at Mark Hummel's harmonica shows to playing. But Mark Hummel's harmonica blowouts had some of the very best harp players, that there are, like Charlie Musselwhite, James Cotton, Lee Lester, Billy Boy Arnold. You name it. You went from selling merch there to being a featured artist, and not just being a featured artist, but putting some pressure on some of these old pros. So, it's just a huge accomplishment. You really showed them.
You know what? I am very happy that I got the opportunity to sell merch for these guys, because it was, uh, again, a way to connect to this scene that was totally alien, and would have been if I had been living in India. It would have just felt like there's like an alien planet with this alien blues harmonica stuff going on. But I got to be in there, and I got to be a participant, and I was, like a little gopher, selling CDs, getting them their drinks and all that kind of stuff. And then I got to learn from watching them, just not only on stage but off stage, and then learn that they're all human beings and they're not, gods, and those kinds of things. They kind of helped me in this journey.
That's a separate issue right there.
Yeah. So the fact that that I got to play on a Mark Hummel blowout was just not that I'm into resume building, but I'm very happy that that's one of my life's accomplishments. Yeah.
Let's go over a little bit of a more timeline, because I met you about 6 years ago when I was new to the San Jose live music blues scene at Little Lou's. And you ran the jam there at Little Lou's and brought in artists from all over the world consistently for every week. So tell me a little bit about, Little Lou's, and then after Little Lou's ended.
So the whole Little Lou's thing, that scene that you watched me kind of grow at Little Lou's already existed a few years ago, before that, at an older club called the Grand L Saloon, just right down the street from Little Lou's. And that's really where I started the whole jam phenomena, if you want to call it. That what had happened was I basically started playing in a band called Tip of the Top. It was my first band, really, and we had a good run for about 4 years. But as part of playing in that band, we kind of needed a place that was consistent, weekly, almost rehearsal. And we had just decided to do a jam locally in San Jose at this venue called the Grand L Saloon. And a couple of years into doing that, well, I really hated hosting the jam, to be honest, because Johnny will agree with me. It's
No way.
one of the most one of the most brutal jobs, and I was very raw, totally naive. I didn't know much about dealing with people and dealing with egos, or didn't know my own place in the music world, in the local scene. So it was really hard on me. But I decided to change the format a little bit and start featuring artists, because primarily at that time, around 2010, 2011, the scene was dead. There were no clubs, there weren't that many gigs. A lot of the great artists that I admired were traveling, they were touring, and you could hear about them and see them touring elsewhere, but they were never playing locally. And I'm like, all these guys live here, and I never get to see them play on a weeknight. So let's try and make something happen so they can at least show up and play something and maybe make a little money while doing that. That's how it started. And it just turned into this thing that was a big party on Thursday nights. And after the Grand L closed, I moved over to Little Lou's. That party continued. But what was also starting to happen was, in addition to being a host, my own band and my own little career was taking off. And I was getting a lot of gig opportunities during weekdays as well. And so that often meant I had to take the Thursday night off and go play with my own band. And the problem with a well-run show is, if you're the guy doing and executing everything, you can't just get up and leave. And I did that enough times that I decided there's no point running this thing and calling it mine anymore. So that's when I decided no more Thursday nights. Yeah. But it was a great thing. It was a lot of fun, and I got to meet great people like you, and featured Johnny a bunch of times there.
Oh yeah, we did a lot of things together over the years, and those will always be wonderful memories for me. And one thing I'm curious about is, even on your debut record, you did that one song in Hindi that we performed many times, and that's nice little song at the end of the night that makes everybody feel happy.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful song. But yeah, what made you start thinking, this isn't enough? It's time to start singing in Hindi. It's time to start doing things really differently.
Because I was getting too invested in what I call the mimicry culture in blues, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. as far as being a musician trying to play other people's music, trying to play a certain version of a certain song or play a certain lick from an artist that you really love. And you kind of get so invested in it, you want to be that artist. And in the harmonica world, everybody's trying to be Little Walter, Big Walter, James Cotton, Junior Wells, all put into one. John Lee Williamson, Sonny Boy Williamson. You just want also, Snooky Pryor, Jazz Gillum. I want all of this. I want to just be a shapeshifter and morph into these guys. And I was going through that process, and I'm sure in the guitar world it's the same thing. You just want all of the kings. You can just summon whatever you want and play that like them. What happened to me was I realized that almost like in acting, if you're a great impressionist or somebody that does good mimicry, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a great actor, right? You're a good impressionist. And I was falling into this trap of where I wanted to almost overwhelmingly sound like my idols. And I realized that none of them, Junior Wells doesn't sound like James Cotton, Little Walter doesn't sound like Big Walter. None of them sounded like each other and probably never wanted to either, because that was their unique identity. So I came to the realization that, hey, why am I so invested in being like them when I have all of this stuff of my own, growing up in a whole different land, listening to so much other music than blues, starting out in my early life. Why don't I bring some of that into the music? So that was the musical reason, but culturally speaking also, I just was starting to see so much change happening. And while I was in my 20s, felt the need to kind of suppress this, my voice in general conversation or even in the music world as trying to be ideal brown immigrant guy. In my 30s, I was like, screw that. I want to speak my mind and not participate in a blues culture that's overwhelmingly rigid and where this box has been built for me where I need to fit in and I don't fit in many times. So that was my first expression of almost like just revealing my true identity and kind of almost dissent in some way.
It was very innovative. And you had a lot of support with the local blues scene in San Jose, like Kid Anderson. I know he played sitar as you developed.
Oh, he co-produced that those early albums. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was great that you got some acceptance in the blues scene for venturing out and being so innovative. And
yeah, I honestly don't think there was, from the musicians, there wasn't pushback. They knew that this had to happen. And honestly, the concept of doing Bollywood blues is just cool when you describe it. And the best metric for that is when I talked to Jim Pugh, who was, the producer on these records from Little Village Foundation. When I first mentioned the concept to him that I want to do this as an album, not just one or two songs here and there, he was so ecstatic that I realized, okay, they get it and they like this concept. It's not just in my head, right. And I'm not just losing my mind over nothing.
It sounds like almost has a political side to it too.
Yeah, there is.
Speak about that?
Yeah, there is. How much time we got?
Yeah. I mean, you said you were sort of put into a box, like artistically and personally, and
yeah,
almost politically, and this is a way of putting your real identity into people's.
There's a cultural
backing down from it.
There's a cultural side to it. That it starts out as a cultural side, and this is not to get too caught up in race talk.
That might have been a better word for me to use. It's like a cultural statement.
It's a cultural side. For me, I have a strange outsider identity. I'm an immigrant in the U.S., so I don't meet you're an American. I don't meet that authenticity standard, right, of being an American playing American blues. But I'm also not black, right? So that authenticity is.
So you're doubly non-authentic.
I'm completely not authentic. In the blues world, there's this weird game that gets played because the reality is all of, at least in the traditional world, all of the artists, band leaders, sidemen, most of the talent, most of the fans, Most of the promoters and the booking folks, talent buyers, they're all white. And in that white culture in blues, there is a desperate kind of and I understand it, but there's this game of authenticity. Who's authentic? Why are they authentic? How are they authentic? So there's all of these things that have been established, that you have standards that you have to meet for authenticity. And I found that I'm getting caught up in this, and I don't belong in this. This is not something I need to play. I don't need to prove anything to anybody about authenticity when I can be authentic in both my love for blues, my appreciation for all these idols that I'm learning from, and then being able to express myself. And so once I released myself from all of this and decided, hey, I'm going to go to the Hummel Blowout, and I'm going to do a song like Rukhsana, which you played on my record. And
right.
I'm going to funky Hindi,
Indian
song. Indian song. And
Hindi.
I don't care who played it before me. I don't care who came after me.
Right.
Yeah, just do that. And really have a no strings attached kind of approach to it. That's a political statement in a way, because it's revealing a new face of the United States, because what I'm doing is as American as anything else that's out there. It's a different, unique American story and journey and cultural output, but it is American. And I need people to understand this, because I'm also now, as part of this Bollywood Blues project, finding that this is getting tokenized, almost like, oh, let's also have Aki on board because it gives us this little ethnic flavor. No, this is an American flavor.
Right.
Have the other guys on board to give me some other flavor. So I'm trying to flip the script here a little bit, and I've taken a lot of hits for doing that, but I'm also happier than I've ever been doing that, and that's really why I do it.
Yeah. I know you travel a lot with Johnny to Russia, and you've been to South America, and I'm always curious about how different languages go over in other languages. I mean, really, they don't know the content or the wording of what you're singing, and yet they're enjoying it, sometimes even singing along. And I always talk about tonality. So I just wondered how you felt about going to other countries like South America and Russia and doing some of the Bollywood songs or the Hindi songs in your native language.
So it's kind of funny because there's, again, a couple of factors here at play. Now the third one comes to mind. I'll be quick about this, but so first, when you perform there, even in English in some of these countries, now I'm not talking about Scandinavian countries because they'll speak English fluently there and they understand what you're saying, but you take South America or you take Russia, many people may not even understand what you're saying in English to begin with. Right. So there's already a little bit of a detachment. Now that said, specifically with regard to English, and I can say this because I grew up somewhere else listening to English music, pop or whatever else. There were many instances where I didn't know what was being said, or if I could understand the words, I didn't understand the meaning because it was slang. Or if I did understand the meaning, I didn't understand the context in which it was being used. So there's many levels of detachment, and people kind of learn that even if they don't understand the full, message, they learn to enjoy the song anyway. So with English music, I think there's already a culture of enjoying the song no matter what. When I realized, hey, many people don't know what I'm saying in English, then it became very easy to sing in Hindi because then I was like, well, they don't know what the hell I'm saying anyway, right? So that kind of helped me a little bit. But I also am very, it's strange because I often go to, like for Brazil, when I've gone down there, they'll bill me as India, USA, as the international talent from, which is correct. But I don't know what the audience is perceiving me as. Are they looking at me as an American? Probably not. But are they also looking at me as an Indian guy? Probably not, because I'm sit there, singing "Sweet Home Chicago" along with Johnny. So what's going on in their heads? It's a surreal experience sometimes.
Yeah.
But it connects us to a group of people that we never met before.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those experiences that kind of opens your mind to a lot of cultural aspects that you didn't regard or didn't consider before.
Excellent.
You do a great job of connecting to the audience wherever you are. It's something. Then that's a gift. You can't really learn that. You got to feel that and take the opportunity to learn how to do it. What were you saying?
Well, we were watching all your videos, and we just loved them. They were brilliant, and they were hilarious. And like you said, you were singing in Hindi, but because the storyline was there, and the acting was there, we totally got what it was about most of the time. I think.
Yeah, they're visually dazzling.
They're
They tell a
visually
story,
dazzling,
and you're always playing a part where you never quite get what you want.
Never quite. That's the story of life.
It has the elements, all the elements.
When Rachel, that's your wife, when she puts that note Tiachu on your back at the final.
What is Tiachu?
Come on, now, tell me what that is.
So Tiachu is, I flipped a very foul Hindi word called chutia. Well, not foul anymore, but it was not something that you say in front of your mom. That kind of word. It's one of those cuss words where when you're 9 and you say it in front of your parents, they'll look at you going, "What did you say?" And it means you're an idiot. If I was to just tone it down, I would say that if somebody did something really stupid, and I'd call them a chutia. Obviously, I didn't want to write a song called Chutia. It's a political song. It's a very, very political song, and it's calling people out on their biases. Really, it's a song about confirmation bias, where you only see what you want to see and you believe what you want to believe, and you find all of this stuff to connect to because it fuels that preconceived worldview that you have. And that's really what I wrote the song about. It's a little angry. I'm being a little aggressive in using that word. But I softened the blow.
You tone it down with the hillbilly influence, right?
I toned it down in 2 ways. I added that melodic kind of feel to it, which is almost like a sing-along, which is hilarious because now I get videos once in a while of kids, like my musician peers, like in the UK or in Brazil. I just got one video a couple of days of this guy's daughter singing. She's like 4 years old and she's singing along to it. But the reason I didn't want to use that word explicitly was because I didn't want that political thing to blow up in India, which it can if the right circumstances develop. So I just flipped it and made it a little cute, but that doesn't take away from the message of the song, which is we're all flawed and we need to take a step back and understand our failings.
Yeah, excellent. That was so hilarious. Do you think you could play a little bit for us for a few minutes, Aki? I'd really like to.
Oh man, the tough thing with not having Johnny or having Johnny hundreds of miles away.
You want to play along, Johnny?
That would be great.
That would be free jazz right there, given the lag in Zoom. That'd be free blues.
Songs together.
रिवाजों में तू अटका रस्मों का तू गुलाम फसाया तुझको जिसने करे उसी को सलाम करे उसी को सलाम ओ तियाचू तियाचू बन गया तू ओ तियाचू तियाचू बन गया तू ओ तियाचू तियाचू बन गया तू ओ तियाचू बन गया तू Now, if you're still wondering what a tiachu might be, just say it over and over and over. I promise you'll see. If there's no one in your life that is a tiachu, I hate to break it to you, my friend, but it just might be you.
Perfect material for word use.
Yeah.
This is all. It's about authenticity and legitimacy and and that sort of thing. And I'm trying to throw it out the window in my own way too. We're both trying to do that with this podcast, with No Work with Japan. You know, I really appreciate what you're doing. And I've got to say something about the Beatles thing, which is, I kind of feel like your career in blues was like the Beatles' career before Sgt. Pepper's. And then now now going Bollywood, it's like you have this dazzling new palette of new grooves, new tempos, new instruments, new colors, new language, new cultural references, and like anything goes.
Yeah.
So
well, I do have to go on a drug binge at some point, and
what's that?
right, I have to go on a massive drug binge and drop some acid and do a real Sgt. Pepper's. But the good news with that is, and this is something I am looking forward to at some point, is after this Sgt. Pepper's, it's a great reference. I do want to do a white album, which is stripped down and totally, goes in the other direction. Go back to doing a blues thing, a blues record like Don't Hold Back, and but with my songs, more of my original songs.
Because
so
you kind of discovered your identity. You've gone on a journey and you've become more full of yourself, and now you're ready to do that or anything else you want to do.
Yeah. I may have to take 6 months off and go to the Himalayas and go to Rishikesh and meditate for a while.
Yeah.
But I think we're kind of doing that right now in the pandemic. This is our little escape.
Forced meditation.
Meditation has never been my strong suit.
So I have one last question for you, Aki. Boy, we've been a long journey together too. I remember when I first took over Holland at Greaseland, you were off doing Bollywood, and you got your Bollywood album going, and then now you're with Sony. But one of the things you did that I was curious about is you went to India with your band. And I wondered, how was that going back to Mumbai, your hometown, and bringing, the musicians from the United States, which kind of switched, over, and there you are in India doing it. That must have been remarkable. But
it was really, it was awesome. It's one of those dreams come true things for me. And the great thing was the way it worked out and played out was it had nothing to do with the Sony music deal that I had gotten a couple of months before that. This was completely tied to my jam. A gentleman, an Indian gentleman had stopped by the jam, and he owns one of the big IT firms in India, and he was at the Poorhouse Bistro watching this jam, and he saw me do a couple of these Bollywood songs during the opening set, and then he saw me do blues, and he's a big blues fan, a blues and jazz fan, and he just basically, we got on a phone call right after that, and he wanted to bring the band over just because it was something he had never seen before, anything like that, and especially some Indian guy blowing harmonica was just, like an alien concept to him. And so it worked out in a way where I played a bunch of corporate shows, thanks to him, and private shows, but I was also able to piggyback on that and do public shows, club shows in New Delhi and Bombay. And especially going to Bombay was awesome because I got to reconnect with family that I hadn't seen in 10, 11 years.
Wow.
Everybody had grown up, folks had gotten married, and it was awesome. A lot of them came to one of my public shows and danced, and it was really awesome. And when I sang those songs, the old Bollywood songs that I cover over here in the US, it's a different thing because folks look at it from a different perspective. But over there, when they know those songs, you can see their faces light up because they're watching something that they can really connect to, presented in a different way. And that was something cool.
Yeah, you took a historical piece and brought it to the modern world. Yeah, that's so great. Well, congratulations on that. And that was my last question. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I am curious, like when you did these public shows, like Who came?
So it just depended on the show. One of the shows, the one that I'm talking about, where my folks came and had a big old big old party, that was on. There's a huge promenade on the seaside in a really posh kind of part of Bombay. But I mean, I'm saying posh by my 80s and 90s perception. I don't know how things have changed, but it's still a very popular part of Bombay. And being that it was out by the seashore, we were on this in this amphitheater that was literally by the sea, and they had set up. It was like a weekly or bi-weekly kind of a concert series that I played. So not only were there people who came to watch a show, and it was free, totally free. People could. So there were music lovers, but there in India, and I can't describe this. I mean, New York City is probably the closest thing where you see this mass of people just walking on the sidewalks and on the streets, because that's the population there. And it was an evening show that I played to probably thousands of people, because they were just doing everything. They're walking, they were going back home from work. They were probably going to work. They were probably just out jogging, enjoying the evening sun. And what was great was to watch people stop in their tracks, because here they were watching a band playing.
Right?
Yeah, it was bizarre to many of them, because I'm singing these songs. They know this song, but they're watching this white band.
How is this possible? Who are these people? Right?
And yeah,
you must have loved that.
I loved it. I thought it was, I mean, I know for a fact they'd never seen anything like that. I don't care whether they liked it or hated it. I don't think they hated it. It was more of a curiosity factor. But yeah. What's that?
I don't think they hated it.
I don't think they hated it, because they stuck around. That was great.
Right.
And then I got them all to sing eventually and
Oh,
all
man.
that. But even there, it was interesting, because I have transformed, and even though I haven't quite lost my mannerisms, and I can speak Hindi just as fluently as anybody there, and they wouldn't be able to tell that I'm now, living in the US and have been for over 20 years, just from my Hindi mannerisms. When they saw me in that context, they couldn't quite figure out what the hell I was.
That's perfect.
That was great. Right? Because what freaks people out at the end of a show like that is when I actually start talking to them in Hindi, which shouldn't, because I sang in Hindi, right?
Yeah.
But they still view me in the context of somebody that's American or Western,
Yeah.
who has learned these words somehow.
How did you know that?
How should you know that? I often see people go up to the band members and they'll ask them how they learned these songs, and I'm like, hey, you can come talk to me. I'm the guy who's singing them. But there's just this weird detachment sometimes where they don't know. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on all the work you've done and all the music you've produced and the videos. We've just been really enjoying watching your journey. And we'll look forward to that white album coming out.
I'll call it the Brown Album.
The brown album. Your white brown album.
And where can people find out more about you?
Yeah.
They can go to my website, akikumar.com, or they can just get a hold of my mom and she'll talk to them all about me.
She'll tell them all about you.
And she'll be nice people too.
Okay. I'm in the same boat. Okay. Aki, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It was great talking to you again. Thank you.
Thanks for great. And thanks to Chicago Blues Network for sponsoring this show. And we'll see you guys next time. We're going to Jesus on a tortilla. You've also worked with them, Milan, and so have I. So
our Italian
great blues purist band from Milan.
Yes.
Okay, Aki, you're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Aki.
All right, bye-bye.